Hello, this is Roland. Today I want to continue with the Beatitudes. And in the last video, I talked about this one. A heavenly attitude is theirs, those serving the peace of God. They will be called the children of God. Those serving the peace of God. I'm reading from the Khaboris manuscript, painstakingly translated from the Aramaic. The Khaboris manuscript is an ancient manuscript written in Aramaic, the language that Jesus spoke, translated into English with an effort to maintain the sense of the Aramaic words. So, a heavenly attitude is theirs, those serving the peace of God. Now, if we're going to talk about the peace of God, in the King James translation says, "Blessed are the peacemakers." So let's talk about peacemakers. Christ very often told us to forgive. Very often he said to forgive. That was a very important thing. It was so important. It's so important that he said, if you don't forgive others, your heavenly Father won't forgive you. That's what he said. Now, what does it mean not to forgive others? You know what it means? It means to resent them. To continue to resent them. Or to have a grudge against them. Or a judgment. Often it's a secret one. You don't tell them. You smile. On the surface you smile. But underneath you have a judgment. Okay? Some people have it against their partner. Maybe many people do. Maybe most. So, a secret judgment against others. But we can also call it a grudge. We can call it unfinished business. We can call it anger. Okay? But the most common of all, and of which there's an element in all of the others, is resentment. So when you resent another person, you have formed a judgment against them. You're condemning them in your mind, and it's not forgiveness. So forgiveness means to not judge and not resent. Now, how can there be peace if you resent another person? See, which they sense it. Even if all your surface behavior is so is a compensation for the secret judgment. See, for example, a lot of women resent their husband. They resent their husband. But then they go overboard not doing for him, serving and being nice and so on, to make up for the guilt for judging him, see? If he's a decent guy, well, it's not fair. Plus, he probably doesn't know what's going on. But he senses something's not right. He can sense it. Okay? And if he's not a decent guy, or if he's still immature and hasn't hasn't learned yet what it means to be, a man when it comes to being a husband and a father, then he'll take advantage of all of her service. He'll take advantage of it. And when he takes advantage, then she resents him even more. But if it's a secret judgment, he doesn't know what's going on. See? A lot of men secretly resent their see, I'm being even-handed. I'm talking about both. A lot of men secretly resent their wife. She wants something from him. He doesn't know what she wants. And she's angry at him, and he doesn't know why she's angry. You have to read my books about relationships. I'm not going to go into it here. But what she wants from him is real agape love, fatherly love, and he doesn't have it. So she is unhappy and she resents him, and he doesn't know what's happening. So he's angry. So he becomes angry. See, or on the other hand, he goes off to work and he comes home, and he sees that the kids are laying around on the floor and they're not doing their homework and they're just playing video games or texting or something. And then he lays down the law, tells them to clean up their room and start doing their homework and so on and so forth. And then And then they say, boo-hoo, Daddy is mean, see? Daddy is mean. Mommy is nice. Daddy is mean. And so he resents that. See, he doesn't understand. See, a lot of men just scratch their head and they really don't understand how they're missing the boat. But the bottom line is, he's angry and he's resentful. And she's angry and she's resentful. Okay? And the kids, when their father isn't there for them, when their mom is willful and bossy, see, when there are undercurrents of, they sense the undercurrents of tension between their parents, and when their dad isn't there for them, okay, then what? They resent their parents. So now they're resentful. So what resentment is, it's a judgment, it's a condemnation, and it's unforgiveness. So now you see why there's turmoil and arguments in the family, in the whole world, in the nation, in the whole world. It starts in the family. One person resenting another. Okay? So Christ said, blessed are those who serve the peace of God. So the peace of God in this situation here begins with letting go of the resentment. I have many lectures on this topic, and I've written about it extensively. It's very important because a lot of people don't know what forgiveness means. They think forgiveness means you have to be nice and act nice and so on. No, it doesn't mean that. What it means is that you let go of the resentment. You let go of the judgment. You let go of the grudge. See? Which is it's a wonderful thing because, number one, now you've ended the enmity between you and the other person. See? Christ said, if you're bringing your gifts to the temple, and then you remember that you've got some issue, unfinished business with your brother, he said, leave your gifts at the temple door and first go make it right with your brother. Okay? So, making it right. Okay? By letting go of the resentment. Letting go of the resentment. Okay? Letting go of the judgment. See? Learn to observe people. Learn to just see. It's so helpful when you can just see that the other person is just a person. Okay? Not perfect. But you're not perfect either. See? You're not perfect either. So puffing up and judging another person is playing God. Did you know that? It's playing God. See, God is both king and the judge. So in our imitation of God, we want to be the king or the queen. We want other people to acknowledge us and worship us and think well of us and admire us, respect us. And when they don't, or when we don't get our will, then we resent them. And then we condemn them. See? So then we become a judge. First we want to be a king, and then when we don't get what we want from other people, then we resent them and judge and condemn them. Well, it's a naughty game. It's a nasty game. It's not a good thing to be doing, so you need to knock that off. Okay? Now we're talking about forgiveness. Now, Christ said, blessed are those who serve the peace of God. Now here's the other thing. In your past, undoubtedly, you've made some boo-boos. Okay? Especially if you're 40, 50, 60, 70 years old. You've made some boo-boos. Maybe as a mom, now you realize you were meddling, trying to run other people's lives, trying to run your kids' lives. Maybe doing too much for them, spoiling them. Maybe turning them against their dad. See? Or meddling. See? Or you were willful. You were willful. You wanted your will to be done. See? And manipulative. See? And so people either conformed and then lost their character, or they rebelled. Well, maybe now you can see that now years later, as you grow, as you mature, see, you begin to see that that's the case. Well, if that's the case, then you can go to your kids, see, and you can tell them. You say, now I see what I was doing. I was manipulative, or I was willful. See, I took it out on you. I resented, your dad, and I took it out on you, and I'm sorry. I see now that I was wrong. I was wrong for doing that. I apologize. I'm sorry. See? You know what you're doing? You're clearing the air. You're serving the peace of God, but you have to mean it. If it's phony, if you're just doing it to ease your guilt, it won't work. It's not real. But if it's real, see, then it's a beautiful thing. But don't expect anything from them. Don't expect them to suddenly have. See, if they rebelled against you, for example, see, they don't want to have anything to do with you, or they rebelled against you. Don't expect them to suddenly change and everything will be wonderful. May not be. See, but you see what you've done by admitting you're wrong. Now you make it easier for them to let go of their judgment and resentment against you. See, as long as you held on to your self-righteous stance and acted like you were perfect and wonderful and made excuses for whatever you did and blamed them and accused them of being ungrateful and so on, that got in the way of their being able to forgive, in other words, to let go of the resentment. And you dads, okay, maybe now you're older and wiser, okay, grown up, but when you were younger, see, maybe you blew it with your kids. Now maybe a kid doesn't want to talk to you, okay? Or maybe he does talk to you, but you can see that what you did hurt him or her by not being there. See, you weren't there. You weren't there for them. So now, there's one of two things you can do. If they will talk to you, then you can go to them and say, I'm sorry. Now I see that what you needed from your father, you needed fatherly love from me. You needed me to be there for you, and I wasn't there. Okay, I was selfish. I went off to another woman, or I was drinking, or I was working too much, and I see that's wrong. I'm sorry. See, and you have to mean it. If it's phony, then don't even say anything, because you'll just make things worse. But if you really mean it, clear the air. If they don't want to talk to you, then you can't force yourself on them. Maybe you could send them a letter. Or see if wait for a little opening. If there is none, then you can just admit in your heart that you're wrong. Okay. But if there's an opportunity to tell them. Now, other times, some of you now, you see that you've messed up, but then maybe your child comes to you. Then they read you the riot act. They said, when I was a kid, you weren't there for me. When it was my birthday, you weren't there, and you were out drinking, and I saw you with another woman, and Mom was unhappy, and then you screamed, you hit me, and you weren't there for me when I needed you. And see, they'll read you the riot act. They'll tell you. And what you have to do is to listen, not argue with them. See, not try to defend your ego, your pride, but listen. Okay, and if you can, in a sincere way, see, they remember everything that you did to you. Don't. See, you don't remember, but they do. And if you see that what you did was wrong, then apologize right on the spot. I'm sorry, but mean it. You have to mean it. Okay. Now maybe then they can forgive you. In other words, let go of their resentment against you, and then you can be friends. But maybe they won't. Maybe they'll never forgive you. Now you see the harm you've done, but at least you've cleared the air. At least you've cleared the air and made it possible for there to be peace. See, as long as you hang on to your self-righteousness, as long as you want to be right and not wrong, as long as you make your pride more important than what's right, see, as long as you don't want to admit the truth, see, then there's no peace. Or there may be an eerie peace. You go into some houses and homes, and there's an eerie peace, okay? On the surface, people are smiling and acting, proper, but underneath there's undercurrents of resentment. There was a great, well, I won't say great, but I will say a celebrated columnist, an advice giver. Her name was Ann Landers, and for many years, I think for decades, people wrote her letters, and then she selected some of the letters, and she responded. They asked for her advice, and then she responded in her newspaper column, which was in hundreds of newspapers from coast to coast, okay, and Landers. And her sister was Dear Abby, did the same thing. Remember Dear Abby? Well, anyway, I'll never forget, and I've said this many times over the years, but I'll say it again because there are always new listeners and new viewers. They asked her, they said, after your long career giving advice to people, if you could give people just one piece of advice, what would it be? I was intrigued. What would she say? What would she say? And so the question was, if you could give, after your long career, if you could just give people one piece of advice, what would it be? She said, if I could just give people one piece of advice, it would be to be more forgiving. To be more forgiving. Okay? But now, I've made it easy for you to be forgiving if you're not too prideful. Okay? Because I've told you that it doesn't mean you have to be nice and act nice and all that stuff. What it means is let go of the resentment. Let go of the resentment. Okay? So you serve the peace of God by letting go of resentment, letting go of your grudge against other people. See, forgive them. See, it helps when you get older, because then you can see that when you were a kid, you judged your parents. See, you were only a kid, okay? So you couldn't, what happened to you as a kid, you couldn't help it. But your reaction, you could help, okay? And you judged them harshly. You thought, for example, maybe they're doing it on purpose. See, whatever they did, their acts of commission or omission. But now that you're older, you can see that they weren't doing it on purpose. They were compelled to do it. Something inside them was compelling them. See? And they didn't even know what they were doing. Just like you. Okay? Do you want to yell and scream at your kids? Do you want to mess up? See? No, you don't. You don't want to. But yet you are. See? Well, freedom for you and overcoming these compulsions and negativities for you begins with forgiving others. And then admitting to other people. See, if you can admit it right on the spot, like let's say you're a parent right now, you have a kid or a teenager or a little kid, or okay, and your child comes to you and says, could I ask you a question? And then you're impatient. You say, no, I'm busy right now. I'm trying to talk to my friend. But you immediately realize that not only are you impatient, which is wrong, but you're being dishonest. You're not too busy. You could take a moment. See? So then apologize immediately. Say, my son, I'm sorry, or my daughter, I'm sorry. That was not true. I do have the time. I'm sorry, I didn't tell the truth. I apologize, see? Admit it right on the spot. It's a very beautiful thing when they see that you're making truth more important than your own ego. Okay? And then people from your past, you may be able to go to them, see, and admit what you did and be sorry, but maybe you can't. Maybe they're gone. Maybe you don't know where they're at, or they've passed away, or they don't want to see you. Well, and then if that's the case, then just forgive them in your heart. Okay? Admit in your heart what you did was wrong and be sorry. See? Well, I hope this is helpful to you. I expanded a little bit on this beatitude. And I do have to say that my books, especially the ones on relationships, like The Myths and Mysteries of Marriage, and also my book, Putting the Forever Back in Love, both of those are, and all my other books actually, but especially those two could be very helpful to you. Okay. Well, I hope you enjoyed this video, and in my next video, Lord willing, I'll continue talking about the next beatitude.